Varoufakis, an economist and former finance minister of Greece. He is also author of the new book, Techno-Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. Yanis, it's so great to have you back on. And this is sort of a continuation of the conversation about capitalism we had last time you were on. Maybe just to introduce this idea to the audience, what defines the transition from capitalism to techno-feudalism in your mind?
Well, David, thank you. It's great to be back. Look, this is a very weird hypothesis of mine. It's very controversial. It all depends on, of course, on what do you mean by capitalism. Okay, but to answer your question directly, what I think has happened over the last 8, 9, 10 years is that capital has become so triumphant that it dominated so powerfully that it actually mutated like a toxic virus that mutates and becomes far more toxic. And it mutated into what I call cloud capital.
Interestingly enough, a Guatemalan libertarian had a similar idea about what's happening in Venezuela, which is that it's mutated into narco socialism. I guess not like a similar idea, but along the same lines of societies evolving.
Kind of capital that lives inside your smartphone, on your laptop.
But I wanted to address this idea of capital being dominant. And this is a recurring theme in Marxist analysis that essentially the theory is, corporations grow more powerful, they grow larger, and they reach some sort of critical mass stage where they just keep growing until they monopolize the industry, and then terrible things result. But this isn't really what happens in reality. It's true that there are some large corporations like Microsoft, Amazon, and Walmart. But while these corporations have been extremely successful because they provide people with what they want, because they do a better job than everybody else of forecasting consumer demand, they've never been able to wield any sort of power. And this is, I guess, just something that Marxists get wrong, is that in a capitalist economy, in a market economy, it doesn't really matter how big and rich you are. You still don't have any power. The only power you have is the power that any firm has, which is to offer consumers a product they want to purchase, and that's it. Because ultimately, no matter how many billions or hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars your corporation is evaluated at, you still have to produce something that people want to buy. You're ultimately the servant of the consumer. Marxists view the marketplace as a battle between capital and labor. But that's really not what's going on at all. What's going on is that the market economy is peaceful social cooperation. It's people working together harmoniously towards their shared ends. So a businessman hires a worker because they value the worker's labor more than the money that they're spending to hire that worker. They need the worker to, or they want the worker to, play some role in the process of production, and that's going to be more valuable to them than the wages they pay the worker. Conversely, the worker, usually for most people, not everybody, some people save, but usually for most people, we're all pretty much broke, so they're working for a wage, just so that they can pay their bills, they can buy food, maybe they can go to the movies, do something frivolous or whatever. But so most people, most of us anyway, are out here, grinding just to pay our bills, just to sort of stay afloat, right? So we obviously place a very high value getting that money, especially if it's the highest sort of or best offer we have amongst various employers in the economy. So the interests of the employer and the employee are actually quite harmonious. Marxists allege that profits are obtained by sort of shorting the worker their share of the proceeds. But that's not what happens at all. After all, not all businessmen turn profits. Maybe most of them do. Even that's questionable because there's so many failed businesses. I wouldn't want to speculate on what percentage of businesses turn profits, but uh, the way that businesses turn a profit is through doing a better job of anticipating consumer demand than their competition. It's got nothing to do with shorting a worker. Workers are going to get paid basically the market rate for the services they offer because the employer knows that he can get the same job done through somebody else at the market rate. So let's say the market rate for, this is a gross oversimplification because there's a lot of factors at play here in determining an individual's productivity, but let's say the market rate for um, labor of a certain quality in a specific industry, is $12 an hour. The employer knows that, okay, this guy doesn't want to take $12 an hour, somebody else will. But the employee also knows, okay, this guy doesn't want to pay $12 an hour, somebody else will. I mean, everybody wants to pay the least and get paid the most. I guess the second thing would be I don't see much value in thinking of capital as an abstraction, like as a class. But has capital, have businessmen become more dominant? Has their share of income been increasing? I think no, I don't think so. Maybe to their share of income increasing. I'm not sure about that, but I don't think they've become more dominant. I mean, workers today are the most whiny, entitled, like half-assers there are, compared to our grandfathers would have to bust their ass 60 hours a week for to make $2. So I don't see any rise in dominance of capital. Not that that concept really makes sense. I mean, there's not really the power struggle that Marxists imagine there is in the first place. Instead, what happens is as businessmen reinvest profits into their businesses, they accumulate capital, and this capital stock, which is another term for all the capital in the economy, this heightened capital stock leads to higher wages. So it's sort of a harmonious process. It's a harmonious process where everybody benefits, every participant benefits. That's why wages are so much higher in the United States and Canada than in Brazil or the Philippines, because we have this heightened capital stock. But real wages in North America, in the U.S. and Canada anyway, have been rising steadily. They could have been rising quicker if we didn't have so much government, but that's another issue.
On the internet, in the cloud, that's cloud capital. And this capital became so toxic that it killed its host, capitalism, and replaced it with something that I call techno-feudalism. Let me be very specific by what I mean. This is not airy-fairy stuff. I hope it's not. The idea here is this. Look, capitalism is predicated on two major,
building credit may not be,
if you want, sort of foundations. One is markets. Unlike previous societies, everything that matters economically under capitalism was channeled through markets, labor markets, real estate markets, capital markets. And then the second pylon, the second foundation is profit. Capitalism was fueled, the machine, the engine of capitalism was fueled by profit. Unlike previous societies, feudalism, which was founded on land and on rent, capitalism is founded on markets and on profit. My view is that cloud capital has replaced both markets and profit. It has replaced markets with digital fiefdoms, I call them, or platforms, you may call them, like Amazon.com, which looks like a market, but don't make any mistake here. It is not a market. And profit has been replaced by rent, a form of rent. It's not ground rent. It's not like the rent that feudal lords used to collect from the peasants and from the vassals. But it's cloud rent. Every time you buy something off Amazon.com, you pay, or Alibaba, or that doesn't matter what it is, Uber, you pay a substantial amount of, you pay the actual provider of the good or the service to Jeff Bezos or to the owner of cloud capital. And that is no longer capitalism.
So you're talking about the role, if I understand correctly, not just of the tech giants, but the fact that with a lot of these, sure, there are stakeholders and employees and shareholders, but there is a specific person, whether it's Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos, that are almost like, in some sense, the medieval lords and kings. Is that the analogy to some degree?
Yes, I call them cloudalists, or you can call them techno-feudal lords if you want. They are the owners of cloud capital. They are the ones who, because they own vast quantities of this cloud capital, they have a capacity to make us do a number of things that capitalists of yesteryear couldn't do. Capital can arrest our attention, input into our hearts and minds desires that we didn't think we have or had. Right? I mean, advertisers used to do this, but now it's capital that does it. Machines, algorithms that do it, not Don Draper from Mad Men.
Between now and
the thing that they do is once they've created these desires in our mind and in our hearts, they actually satiate them. They sell us the stuff by bypassing every market. So the same machine that makes you want a particular pair of binoculars sells it to you outside the market.
I mean, he's really going off the rails here. That's not what advertising does. Advertising doesn't make you want something. It just informs you about what's on the market. And it's the same thing too with Facebook. Facebook can't make you want something. That's not what their goal is. It's not possible. There's advertising on Facebook, and that advertising, like any other, can make you aware of what your commercial options are, what products are out there. But it's not going to make you want something just because it's well advertised. You're going to want things because you believe that it will allow you to achieve your ends, whatever that ends may be, your goals. There's a complete absence of agency in this analysis of how people behave. It's such a it's such a simplistic depiction of individuals and their desires and their choices. This whole theory of cloud capitalism or whatever he calls it, it's kind of dumb. I mean, no, we're just in regular old capitalism. You could say like mixed market economy, some sort of mix between capitalism and socialism, or capitalism with highly developed welfare state or interventionist economy. We have a technology sector. Social media is a part of that technology sector, and it's growing in size, but I don't think we've reached a point where we've actually changed the nature of the economic structure that we exist in. We're still in a mode of production where the means of production are owned by private individuals. That is capitalism. If anything, we're we're seeing a resurgence in mercantilism, which was the economic ideology that surrounded absolutism in Europe from the 18th, 17th century back to the 14th century. Mer- Mercantilism was basically, it wasn't a coherent ideology, built upon a foundation of axioms. Uh, like that's one of the areas where Wikipedia anyway gets it wrong. Um, what mercantilism was just a ex post rationalization for any of the policy of the crown. So the crown would give a monopoly to the East India Company or whatever, some other group, and then the mercantilist writers would be like, "Yeah, that's a good idea because so and so." They would come up with some BS list of BS reasons why that was such a great idea, whatever the king wanted to do. Yeah, and that's what we have today. I mean, that's what economic journalism is today, except you replace the king with the favored political party, the dominant political party. That's why we get all these media stories about Biden economics and how it's such a great economy. Whatever Biden does is the best policy. It's mercantilism. It's ex post rationalization for any exercise of state power, because that's where their bread is buttered.
In addition, as if that were not enough, every time you're on your phone and you're posting a video or liking something or tweeting or whatever, you're adding to that crowd capital. You are actually producing capital for these people for free. That was never the case. Henry Ford.
Content isn't capital. If it's actually a consumer good, but this is an easy mistake to understand because Marxists don't actually understand what capital is. So, or they have their own special definition of it. They have their own special definition of a lot of things, which is really annoying because they always mean something other than what they're saying. And I think they do this on purpose so they could be like, "Ha, gotcha! You don't understand my special code, so you're an idiot." Basically, like for example, when they talk about commodities, what they really mean is goods. But commodity is a specific type of good. It's like an agricultural good that you can sell without processing. So capital means man-made factors of production, like a factory, or in the case of somebody who's using their cell phone for work, then the cell phone would be capital.